Hello and welcome to another free history online video. And today in this video we're going to be looking at Elizabeth, and we're looking at her foreign policy. Okay, well, thank you for joining me again for this video, and we're going to be looking at Elizabeth's foreign policy, and we're going to be revising some of the key events, most of which involve Spain, of course, and we're going to be then looking at some interpretation skills. So if you're not quite sure on this topic, then do have a look at my revision videos on foreign policy, but also look at my Quizlet notes and refresh your memory, because then you'll be able to be successful at our quiz, which is going to come up in a minute. So have a look above, and I'll put a link to my revision videos. But for now, let's crack on with a little bit of a revision quiz. So welcome to our little quiz here, and this is a little bit of a matching quiz. So the questions and answers are all there. So maybe pause the screen and with your, run your fingers to the answer, maybe, or maybe if you've got a screen capture, then you can maybe use a sort of computer pen to sort of connect the answers. But they're all there. Have a see how much you can remember about Elizabeth's foreign policy. All right. Well, maybe you've had a bit of time to pause the screen and give it a go. So here are the answers then. So when did Elizabeth start supporting Dutch rebels against Spain? Well, as early as 1566, she was sort of courting potential war with Spain because she wanted to support the Protestants in their rebellion against the Catholic overlords of Spain. Then we got in 1585, what did Elizabeth do to help the Dutch rebels against Spanish? Well, she sent Lord Dudley with an army of 7,000 soldiers to help. So that was a declaration of war, basically between England and Spain that lasted to the end of Elizabeth's reign in 1603. And of course, the most spectacular event of that was the Spanish Armada. But she also upset the Spanish with her privateers. So what were Elizabeth's licensed pirates known as? They were the privateers, people like Drake in particular, and Raleigh sending off his pirates as well. Then jumping up another place in time, 1587, Drake sent fireships into Cadiz and destroyed 12 Spanish ships. What was this known as? Well, this is the singeing of the King of Spain's beard. And this really was an important event in stopping the Spanish Armada in its preparations to invade England. And Drake destroyed a number of the Spanish ships as they lay in port. But the next year, 1588, they still spent 151 ships. How many ships were sent in the Spanish Armada to try and invade England? As I said, 151. And then going back in time a little bit, when did Elizabeth start allowing Dutch rebel ships, the sea beggars, into English ports? 1572. And obviously that upset the Spanish a lot, that there was lots of English help for the Dutch Protestant rebels. Well, I hope you've got some really strong knowledge after that quiz and you know your things really well. Obviously, if you're not so confident, you can still look back at my Quizlet notes and revision videos to revise that knowledge. But now let's go and look at some interpretation skills. Okay, here is our interpretation question. So how convincing is interpretation A about Elizabeth's foreign policy? We're just looking at the basic thing of just a general question of foreign policy. Sometimes they're just as nice and generous as this. Sometimes maybe they're a bit more specific. But nevertheless, obviously, when you read the question, underline that topic and be aware of it. It's then got the next bit, explain why using interpretation in your knowledge. And we obviously need to follow all those command phrases as well. And we end up with a success criteria for the question. So what do you think that might be? What do you think you need to do to be successful with this question? Have a little bit of a think if you like and work it out. But here's what I think. So firstly, you need to identify two viewpoints from this interpretation. Different to your depth study topic interpretations, where you've got your 3 interpretation questions, your international depth study on paper 1. This is more of just 2 messages from the one interpretation rather than a message from each of the interpretations like you have in your paper 1 work. So we need to identify 2 views. We then need to, for each viewpoint, assess how correct it is using our Peel paragraphs. So we need to give a point about the view and about how correct we think it is, give the evidence of the view, then explain with our knowledge why that's correct or not, why it's convincing or not, and then we can then peel to give a further explanation, maybe another way it's right, or we could be balanced. We could say where it's wrong. And because we would have given really clear points and really clear links that say things like, this is partly convincing, this is very convincing, we shouldn't need to give a conclusion if you've been very clear. If you've not been very clear with your opening and ending sentences, you might need to give a short conclusion. So let's have a little plan of this answer. So we need 2 viewpoints, first of all. So have a read through, pause the screen, have a read through. Can you find 2 viewpoints? So here's my ideas I've found. Firstly, I found Elizabeth's foreign policy was basically caused by religion. Elizabeth was, doing all her decisions based mainly on religion. And finally, it's got a second view there that I've picked out, that her foreign policy success, particularly against Spain, was based on luck. So I found 2 opinions. There's no point in finding facts in this, because facts aren't disputable in terms of an interpretation. Find opinions in there, and I found 2 opinions I think I can argue about. So now I just want to plan my knowledge. So what do we think might be some useful knowledge? Ways we think it's convincing and not convincing. So just plan a few facts, maybe thinking about how foreign policy of Spain was caused by religion. Well, did Elizabeth do anything to do with religion? Remember, her being Protestant, Spain being Catholic. Was there any actual factual events you can think about that are to do with religion? What about her foreign policy was due to luck? Can you think of any lucky events that helped England to be successful? So have a little think for a moment. Can you gather any ideas? Again, you can pause the screen, make a list of ideas, or just have a think, gather some ideas. But here are my ideas. So firstly, point number 1 about religion causing her foreign policy. Yes, because obviously she was helping the Dutch from 1566 as they were Protestants against the what in English considered to be the Catholic enemy perhaps of Spain. She then allowed the sea beggar ships, the Dutch, into English ports in 1572. She even sent an army, basically a declaration of war in 1585, to help the Dutch. And you could say, no, it's not all about religion. There were other things like money making. They were attacking the Spanish with their privateers and their pirates. And you could talk about Drake and his work in that respect. Number 2, secondly, so the idea of luck, is it convincing? Yes, it is, because the Armada was defeated with luck. So the leaders died, and then they ended up with a sort of unqualified leader in charge, Sidonia in charge, and he wasn't necessarily a great admiral. And then also luck, because the storm hit at the Battle of Gravelines, and the Spanish fleet had to sort of run away. I suppose you could also talk about the idea of that actually the army were not there at Calais when they were going to pick them up. That was good luck for the English, because they had to put their anchors down, and then Drake sent in the fire ships. So there are lots of luck and sort of generally bad organisation of Spanish that helped. You could say, no, it's not about luck. It was actually, as I just said, bad organisation Spanish and good organisation English. So they had their race line ships organised that were better for the English conditions. They had their new war tactics using sea cannons to try and smash the mast down on the enemy's ships. And they had a sort of better strategy of naval warfare that was going to help win the day. So there's plenty to talk about here with this interpretation. So how do we write it as an answer? So let's have a go at the first message then, how we're going to do this. Now, you're welcome to write this yourself, okay? And here's how you might write it. You might say, the interpretation is very convincing or partly convincing because, and we're going to give a reason. We're going to give something that it says. For example, it says something. This is convincing because, or not convincing, with your knowledge that we just planned out there on the left side of the screen. And then we might do furthermore, it's convincing, or however, it's not convincing as a wider idea. So that's quite simple. If you want to give that a go, go for it. Pause me now, have a go and write it out for 5 minutes. Try to do it in 5 minutes, be timely, challenge yourself. And then we'll come back to the answer, which I'm about to go through. So here's my answer then. So firstly, I'd make this point. The interpretation is very convincing because Elizabeth's foreign policy was dominated by religion. For example, I'm going to pick out a bit of evidence. For example, it says her foreign policy was caused by a desire to protect Protestantism. Then I'm going to explain with some knowledge. I'm going to use this knowledge on the left-hand side of the screen. This is convincing because Her main foreign policy with Spain started with the Dutch Protestant Rebellion against the Spanish in 1566 and allowed Dutch sea beggars into her ports in 1572. I could say a bit more about that. This really annoyed the Spanish because they were helping the Dutch who were in their empire and interfering. And this was starting to cause tension and war. Furthermore, or however, so I could do a bit more or I could do a bit less. I've got two ideas over there. I've got yes and no ideas, so I could do either one. I have said that the topic is very convincing, so it'd be a bit silly to say however here. I need to say a furthermore. So furthermore, her actions led to war in 1585 when she sent an army of 7,000 soldiers. This war led from 1585 to 1603, and I could add some ideas about the Armada if I so wished. Okay, now over to you. Have a go at the second idea. See if you can explain the second message. Okay, maybe pause the screen and give that a go. Right, good luck with it. Okay, well, I hope you found today's lesson really useful and you've been able to develop your skills with explaining Elizabeth's foreign policy, in particular, that slightly different question of interpretation skills. So look out for more videos and bye-bye for now.